looking at particular things in the world that people say are so, and we are using some techniques. We have some tools that help us to separate the wheat from the chaff. All I'm suggesting is that we take those same tools and we apply them in the same way to the question of religious truth claims. For example, there are three of them that I want to focus on. And let me give them to you briefly, and then we'll go in more depth. The first is discovery by reflection. We reflect on an idea. We ask ourselves, does the idea seem reasonable? Does the story hold together in a consistent way? And in this regard, some things just aren't going to work, okay? Like the atheist who says there is no God. You say, how do you know? Because God told me in a vision. Now you can see right away that this ain't going to get there. Sometimes we know things by observation and discovery. That's the second way. Does your view explain what needs to be explained about the world? Is it consistent with the facts of the world as we know it? So if you're a boss and say one of your employees shows up at work an hour late, and you ask him, why were you late today? And he says, well, there was a herd of elephants that was blocking the freeway. Now you know right away that he's making it up. I mean, I hope that's pretty obvious to you, right? Like the guy was wearing the crazy hat, and it looked really ridiculous. Somebody else said, why are you wearing that crazy hat? And he said, well, it keeps the elephants away. He said, well, there are not any elephants within 100 miles of here. And he said, see, it works, doesn't it? So sometimes by observation and discovery, we know things are false. And finally, by authority. The things you can't verify directly yourself, are they supported by a reliable authority who's in a position to know the answers? In other words, in everyday life, we reject ideas that are against reason. We reject ideas that don't fit the evidence that we see in the world around us, and we reject ideas that come from sources that can't be trusted. On the contrary, we accept ideas that fit together in a coherent way, that explain the evidence, and that come from a trustworthy authority. So let's take a few moments and look at each one of those things in a little more detail. The first test here is the test of reflection. It kind of asks the question, does it make sense? Is there a contradiction? Is there something about the claim that just isn't right? And a moment's reflection will show you that some ideas just aren't going to work. Like the headline in the newspaper in the rack at a grocery store that said, woman discovered who's 10 years younger than her son. Square circles on sale. You know, you see the problem here. Often some of these contradictions are pretty obvious. Here's a couple examples. I used to believe in reincarnation, but that was in a former life. Ask me about my vow of silence. Too late. I've had amnesia for as long as I can remember. Nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded. Always go to other people's funerals, otherwise they won't go to yours. A little slow there at the up. This page intentionally left blank. Not anymore. How about these? If you want to know whether you're home or not, go outside and look in the window. Or the mother who wrote her son in college, your sister had a baby this morning. Haven't heard if it's a boy or girl, so I don't know whether you're an aunt or an uncle. She signs off, if you don't get this letter, let me know and I'll send you another one. Koukl, you hit the nail right between the eyes. Don't look at me with that tone of voice. Obviously, all of these things violate the first principle, and they're very clear. What's amazing, though, is that this kind of thing seems to happen all the time with important things by people who should know better. For example, it might have occurred to you that the idea that all religions lead to God are equally true violates this principle. They can't all be equally true because they have truth claims that compete with each other and are incommensurable. One says that God is personal, another says that God is not personal. One says Jesus is Messiah, another one says he's not. They can't be right on that. And notice we're not talking about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin here, are we? We're talking about real and substantial distinctions. They can't all be right. That view, pluralism, violates this first notion. How about, maybe you notice, by the way, the statement, it's not wrong to think you're right, but it's not right to think others are wrong, fails for the same reason. because the person who says that thinks that those people who think they're right are what? Wrong. Are wrong. And if it's wrong to think other people are wrong, then they're wrong for even putting this thing out on the campus lawn. But all forms of relativism seem to violate this first principle. It's wrong for you to push your morality on me, people say. Then why are they what? Pushing that morality on you. There is no truth. Is that true? All knowledge is socially constructed. Is that statement itself socially constructed? Everything is just a matter of perspective. Is that your perspective? You see, you can go on and on here. I like the guy who says there is no objective. There is no objective reality. Why is he telling me this? So some principles or ideas just seem to violate this first notion. It's religious notions, moral notions, whatever, violate this first principle that there has to be coherence, there has to be a rational sensibility about it, or else it's not true. But not only that, some religious views violate that principle. Hinduism, for example, teaches that all of the universe, all that we perceive as the particulars of the universe, is really an illusion. It's called Maya, M-A-Y-A. The only thing that exists is God, and God is an impersonal God. Now, I got to thinking about that for a while, and frankly, I got some phone calls on the radio show about it. And the problem for me is, those who are advancing the idea of Hinduism in this fashion want me to believe that I am an illusion. That I can know that I don't really exist. How can I know anything if I'm just an illusion? Some of you had dreams last night? The people in your dreams, did they know that they were dream characters? Does Charlie Brown know he's a cartoon character? You know, for that. Well, Charlie Brown doesn't know anything. Illusions can't know things. That's a kind of a contradiction. Maybe it's like a trade-off on Descartes saying, I think, therefore I am. Now it's I think, therefore I ain't. Incidentally, I understand that somebody, when René Descartes, the philosopher, went into a coffee shop once, somebody asked him if he wanted coffee. He said, I think not, and disappeared. Bad philosopher's joke. So here's our first test. Our first test is reflection, and we ask, does the claim or the religious view make sense? Does it hold together? Are there internal contradictions? Does it fit, in a sense, as a story? And in this regard, I think that, first of all, there's nothing incoherent about Christianity. And indeed, the Christian story, if we understand it correctly, holds together wonderfully. And here I'm going to give you a very, very quick kind of Christianity, the Christian worldview in a nutshell. All right? 5 simple points. 5 words that kind of capture the Christian worldview. First, God. Second, man. Third, Jesus. Fourth, the cross. And fifth, resurrection. Those are the bones of the Christian story, if you will. In other words, God exists and is the creator of everything else from nothing else. Since he created everything else, he owns it. And you and I are appropriate subjects in his kingdom. First point. Man. Who and what is man? Man is a finite creature. Though made like God in an important way, he's not God. Therefore, he has transcendent value, but something has gone wrong. He is broken. He is twisted. He is in rebellion against God, and because of that, God's anger falls upon the rebel. 3, the response, Jesus. God becomes a man in the person of Jesus to rescue us, and he does that in 2 ways. By 1, making a trade, by taking on our crimes or the penalty for that and paying the penalty for that, and giving to us all the good things that he merits. And then secondly, by invading our lives in a good way and begin to make us the kind of people that God wanted us to be in the first place.